The Grand Hotel's function room was filled with elegant women, all vying for the attention of Marcus Hale, the recently widowed billionaire. French champagne, designer dresses, very expensive jewelry. But in the center of that luxurious room, two 7-year-old girls watched everything in silence. Emma and Lily Hale were no longer crying. They just existed, floating between weeks-long nannies and a father who worked 18-hour days. Marcus had organized this absurd event on his lawyer's advice. Find someone suitable to give the girls stability. Adequate meant rich, thin, with social connections. He walked around the room with the twins at his side, presenting candidates as if he were doing corporate interviews. "Girls, this is Catherine. She studied in Paris and loves contemporary art," Marcus announced, forcing a professional smile. Emma and Lily nodded politely. Catherine barely glanced at them before turning her attention to Marcus, touching his arm with measured familiarity. The 15th candidate had just made a joke about well-behaved children when Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, I'm thirsty." Marcus flagged down a waiter, but Emma had already seen something. Somebody. On the other side of the room near the buffet table, there was a woman unlike any other. She wore a simple navy blue dress, no flashy jewelry. Her body was visibly plus size, with generous curves that contrasted with the artificial thinness of the other guests. And she was crouched down, talking to a small child who had spilled juice on his clothes. "It's okay, darling." The woman's voice was soft, warm. "Let's clean this up. It wasn't your fault. Accidents happen." She took a tissue from her bag and began to carefully dry the boy's shirt, making funny faces that turned tears into laughter. The child's mother was on her cell phone and hadn't even noticed the problem. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. That kindness, that genuine attention. She hadn't seen that in so long. "Lily," she whispered to her sister, "look over there." The two watched as the woman returned to the buffet table, where she was chatting animatedly with an elderly woman, helping her choose desserts. There was no affectation in his gestures, no performance, just natural goodness. When Marcus finally noticed his daughter's interest, he followed their gaze. "Who is that?" he asked the event organizer, a slender man named Richard. Richard adjusted his glasses and consulted his guest list. Sarah Mitchell, public school teacher. "He came as a companion for his sister who works in public relations. I don't even know why she's here, honestly. Doesn't fit the profile." Marcus frowned, about to turn his attention to the suitable candidates when Emma did something that surprised everyone. She let go of her father's hand and walked straight to Sarah. "Hi," Emma said, her voice small but determined. Sarah turned around, surprised, and her face lit up with a genuine smile. "Hey, my dear, are you one of the party hosts? I'm Emma. That's my sister Lily. Our father is looking for a new mother." The silence that formed around was deafening. Conversations stopped. Cups were suspended in the air. Sarah blinked, clearly not knowing how to respond. "I understand," she said gently, bending down to Emma's level. "This must be very difficult for you. You seem kind," Emma continued with the brutal honesty of children. Different from the others, Lily had come closer too, watching Sarah with intense curiosity. Marcus arrived seconds later, his face red with embarrassment. "Girls, come back here now." "Sorry, ma'am, they shouldn't have." "Daddy," Emma interrupted, turning to him with a more serious expression than any 7-year-old should have. "We chose her." The entire hall froze. Someone let out a muffled laugh, then another. Within seconds, half the women present were laughing, trying to hide the sound behind perfectly manicured hands. "How cute," said Catherine with venom barely disguised as sweetness. "Children say everything, don't they?" "They clearly don't understand what's at stake here," commented another candidate, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Poor things." Sarah felt heat rise up her neck, the familiar humiliation burning her skin. She knew that laugh. I had heard versions of it my whole life, but when she looked at Emma and Lily, she saw something that made her stay there. Hope, genuine hope in the eyes of those children. Marcus was paralyzed, caught between the desire to discipline his daughters and the knowledge that he was humiliating an innocent person in public. "Listen, girls," he began, his voice tense. "I appreciate the creativity, but we need to be realistic. This lady has her own life, and we need someone who understands our lifestyle, who—" "That it's thin?" Emma asked with piercing innocence. The silence returned, this time heavy and uncomfortable. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sarah slowly stood up, her dignity intact despite the humiliation. "It's okay," she said softly to the girls. "You are very special, but your father is right. I wouldn't be suitable for what he needs." She started to walk away when Lily did something unexpected. He grabbed Sarah's hand and didn't let go. "Please don't go," the girl whispered, and for the first time in months, tears began to fall down her face. "You're the first person who didn't pretend to like us." The hall was so silent that you could hear the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Sarah looked at Marcus, who looked completely lost. Then he looked at the twins, those two little souls clearly desperate for genuine connection. And finally, she looked at the other women, with their cruel smiles and silent judgments. She should have left. He should have preserved his dignity and avoided further humiliation. But something in Lily's expression made her stay. "Okay," Sarah said softly, crouching down again. "How about we talk a little? No pressure, no promises. Just a conversation." Emma and Lily instantly lit up. Marcus seemed completely disoriented, as if he had lost control of his own narrative. Catherine let out a loud, artificial laugh. "Marcus, you can't be seriously considering this. Well, look at her." Other women murmured their agreement. Richard, the organizer, seemed horrified at the turn of events. But Marcus was observing something different. He was seeing his daughter smile for the first time in months, seeing them hold a stranger's hand with more affection than they showed for any expensive babysitter he had hired. "Maybe," he began hesitantly, "maybe we can have a talk. In particular, away from all that." Sarah nodded, still processing the absurdity of the situation. The twins practically jumped with joy. As the four headed to a more private corner of the room, the laughter and nasty comments continued. Sarah knew exactly what they were saying about her, about his weight, his appearance, his obvious inadequacy for that world of privilege. What no one there knew, including Marcus Hale and his daughters, was that Sarah Mitchell was not just a public school teacher. She kept a secret that would turn that humiliating night into the first piece of a much more complex game. And as she walked through the scornful looks, Sarah allowed herself a small smile, because sometimes the most underestimated people are exactly the most dangerous. If you're enjoying this story and want to discover the secret that Sarah hides, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this incredible twist. The hotel's private room had a view of the illuminated city, but no one was paying attention to the landscape. Marcus Hale watched Sarah Mitchell with the expression of someone who was reevaluating a risky business decision. The twins were sitting next to her on the leather sofa, stuck together like magnets. "So, you're a teacher," Marcus began, his tone too professional for a conversation about raising his daughters. "Third year, public school in Brooklyn," Sarah replied calmly, used to that tone of disguised judgment. "I understand. And do you live in a one-bedroom apartment, alone, debt-free in case you were wondering?" Marcus blinked, surprised by the frankness. Richard, who had insisted on participating in the conversation to protect Mr. Hale's interests, made a note on his tablet. "Miss Mitchell, let's be real," Richard interjected, adjusting his glasses with irritating superiority. "Mr. Hale needs someone who can navigate the same social environments he frequents. Corporate events, charity dinners, international trips. Someone who adequately represents the image of the family." Sarah understood perfectly what adequately meant. Skinny, rich, socially acceptable. "You're saying I wouldn't be presentable?" Sarah translated, her voice still calm but with a new hardness in her eyes. "I'm saying there are expectations," Richard corrected, without even trying to disguise his contempt. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "I think you're beautiful." Something broke in Sarah's chest. She looked at this 7-year-old offering kindness in a world that clearly hadn't taught her that recently. "Thank you, dear. You are also beautiful." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his perfectly cut hair. He seemed genuinely torn, which was surprising considering men like him normally mind-made decisions without hesitation. "Look, I admire what you do. Teachers are important, but my daughters need stability. Someone who understands the complexities of our lifestyle." "Your money, you mean?" Sarah interrupted him, and for the first time she let a little of her true personality show. "You can speak clearly, Mr. Hale. You think a fat public school teacher doesn't have enough class for her daughters?" The silence was brutal. Marcus blushed, but not from anger, of shame. "I didn't say that. There was no need." Lily began to cry softly. Sarah immediately pulled her into a hug, stroking her hair with a natural tenderness that none of the expensive candidates had demonstrated. "It's okay, darling. Sometimes adults complicate simple things." Marcus watched that scene, discomfort growing in his chest. When was the last time someone hugged their daughters like that? The current nanny treated the girls like chores on a list. He himself could barely stop working long enough to have dinner with them. "A week," Marcus heard himself say, surprised by his own words. Richard almost dropped the tablet. "Sir, a week of testing. Sarah spends time with the girls. We see how they adapt. No commitment from any side." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering a week-long job interview to be a surrogate mother for your daughters?" "I'm offering a chance," Marcus corrected, his voice becoming firmer. "You clearly have something my daughters are responding to. I would be stupid to ignore this just because of social conventions." "Because I'm fat," Sarah added mentally, but didn't say it out loud. "What if I say no?" Marcus blinked, clearly not used to rejection. "Why would you refuse?" Sarah looked at the twins, then at Richard with his silent judgment, and finally at Marcus. Because coming into two children's lives and then leaving can do more harm than good. Because being tested as a product is humiliating. And because, frankly, Mr. Hale, you're not looking for a mother for your daughters. You are looking for an employee who can also act as a decoration at your events. Emma and Lily held their breaths. Richard looked horrified. Marcus stood still, processing the brutal truth. You're right, he finally admitted, and everyone in the room was surprised. My wife died a year ago, cancer, and I don't know how to be a father and a CEO at the same time. I hired people to solve this, like I solve everything in my life, and it's destroying my daughters. His voice broke on the last word. Emma and Lily ran to him, hugging him with heartbreaking hopelessness. Sarah saw a man who had all the money in the world but was completely lost. 3 days, Sarah said softly. Not a week. 3 days, weekends, something light, walks, conversations, getting to know real girls. No pressure, no permanent decisions. If it works, we'll talk about next steps. If it doesn't work, everyone moves on without trauma. Marcus nodded, clearly relieved to have some structure to follow. Deal. Richard could no longer contain himself. Mr. Hale, this is absolutely inappropriate. Think about your reputation, the company's image. What will your partners say when they find out you're considering a fat woman? Sarah added coldly. You can talk, Richard. I won't melt. A person completely outside the proper social circle, he exploded. Marcus, be rational. Leave, Marcus said calmly. Richard blinked. What? Leave the room. Now. You are fired from organizing anything related to my personal life. Richard stomped away, muttering about catastrophic mistakes and lawsuits. When the door closed, the tension in the room eased a little. Sorry about him, Marcus said. You don't need to say sorry. I know a dozen Richards. They are everywhere. Marcus studied Sarah with new curiosity. You don't seem very intimidated by all this. Sarah smiled, a small smile but full of secrets. Mr. Hale, I teach 38-year-olds every day. I've faced parents who yell at me for grades, administrators who underestimate me, and an educational system that is constantly trying to break me. You and your money don't scare me. Something changed in Marcus's expression. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. Okay then. Saturday, 9 in the morning. Brooklyn Aquarium. Girls love sea animals. Emma and Lily burst into genuine smiles. Sarah agreed, already wondering what madness she had gotten herself into. When she left the hotel 40 minutes later, her sister was waiting in the parking lot, furious. Sarah, where were you? I looked for you everywhere. Sorry, Jess. I had a unexpected turnaround. With whom? Do you know anyone here? Sarah looked back, seeing the illuminated silhouette of the Grand Hotel. With no one important, just a desperate father and 2 children who need affection. Jessica studied her sister suspiciously. You're up to something. I know that look. Sarah didn't respond, but allowed herself a smile as she got into the car. His sister didn't even know half the story. Nobody knew. 3 days later, Sarah was at the aquarium, watching Emma and Lily press their faces against the glass of the jellyfish tank in wonder. Marcus stood beside her, more relaxed than she had seen him so far. They haven't stopped talking about you, he admitted. Sarah said this and Sarah would do that. You became a reference in 72 hours. Children crave genuine attention. It's not magic, it's basic. For you, perhaps. For me, it's complicated. Sarah watched him carefully. Marcus Hale was handsome in a classic way, all angular and serious, but there was deep sadness in his eyes, a pain that no money could buy back. You loved your wife. It wasn't a question. Marcus swallowed. With every part of me. Diana was everything. When she died, I kinda died too. But I had 2 kids depending on me, so I kept functioning, working, solving problems, because it's what I know how to do. But it doesn't work with grief, does it? No. They were silent, watching the twins. Then, Marcus spoke softly. Catherine called yesterday. You know, the woman at the party. Sarah pretended not to care, but her body tensed. And she said I was making an embarrassing mistake, that people were talking about, that you were inadequate and I was making myself look ridiculous by considering you. Sarah felt the familiar stab of humiliation, even though she knew it was coming. And you agreed with her? Marcus turned to face her directly. I told her she should never call me again, and I blocked the number. Sarah blinked in surprise. Marcus continued. My daughters smile when you're around. They talk, laugh, ask questions. I haven't seen this in months. So frankly, I don't care what Catherine or anyone else thinks. Something tightened in Sarah's chest. Not romance, not yet, but recognition, mutual respect. Marcus, I need to tell you something. He waited, attentive. Sarah took a deep breath, about to reveal the first layer of her secret when Emma shouted, Sarah! Daddy! Come see the turtles." The moment passed. Marcus smiled and went to his daughters. Sarah stood back for a second, looking at this broken little family that was inexplicably starting to trust her. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah Mitchell had much more to offer than motherly affection. She had connections, resources, a past that would make that entire ridiculous event at the Grand Hotel seem like a child's joke. And in the coming weeks, when certain people discovered who Sarah really was, the humiliation she suffered that night would be avenged in ways no one expected. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a public school teacher, she was the forgotten heiress to a fortune that would make Marcus Hale look middle class. And he was about to remind the entire world why underestimating people for their appearance was always a fatal mistake. Sarah Mitchell sat on the floor of her modest Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by papers she hadn't touched in 5 years, birth certificates, legal documents, faded photographs of a mansion she barely remembered visiting, and a letter. Always that damn letter. "Sarah, when you are ready to claim your place, fortune will be waiting. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Use it wisely. Grandpa Theodore." She was 17 years old when her grandfather died, leaving her an inheritance estimated at $400 million, properties, shares, investments spread across 3 continents, all in a trust fund that she could access at any time. Sarah never touched a penny. "I had chosen to live as a teacher, with a humble salary because I wanted to build something on my own merit." He wanted to prove that his value was not in surnames or bank accounts. "I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I had." But watching Catherine and those women laugh at her, seeing Richard treat her like disposable trash, feeling the weight of Marcus's judgment, something had awakened inside her. Not revenge, justice. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Blackwood and Associates, how can I help?" "I need to speak to Jonathan Blackwood." "Say it's Sarah Mitchell." He will answer. 3 seconds of waiting. Then a deep and surprised voice. "Sarah? My God, after all these years? I thought you decided to live like a hermit to two always." Jonathan Blackwood was the Mitchell family attorney for 3 generations. He was 70 years old, had perfectly coiffed white hair, and a reputation for legally destroying opponents with surgical elegance. "I need you, Jonathan. It's time to use what my grandfather left." Silence on the other side. Then, a long sigh. "Are you sure? Once we start, there is no going back. Your entire private life will be over. The media, the self-interested people, the people wanting pieces of you. I know, but it's not about me. It's about 2 children who need protection, and about teaching some people that appearance does not define value." Jonathan chuckled softly, a sound that carried decades of experience. "Now you're speaking your grandmother's language. She would have loved that. Meet me tomorrow, 10 in the morning. Let's start rebuilding the Mitchell empire." Sarah hung up, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Power. Not destructive power, but the power to change things, to protect those who needed it, to put arrogant people in their place. The next morning, as she walked the streets of Brooklyn toward her law office in Midtown Manhattan, Sarah Mitchell looked like the same humble teacher she always had. Jeans, simple blouse, hair tied in a practical ponytail. Nobody looking at it would imagine that it was about to move $400 million. The Blackwood office occupied 3 floors of a glass skyscraper. Sarah was escorted directly to the main conference room, where Jonathan was waiting for her with a team of 5 specialist lawyers. "Sarah," he greeted her with a warm hug, "you are radiant. Life as a teacher was good for you." "Thank you, Jonathan. But now I need something besides chalk and a blackboard." He smiled and introduced the team. Experts in corporate law, succession, asset protection, and public image, all the best in their fields. "First," Jonathan began, opening a thick folder, "we're going to need to completely reactivate your access to the trust fund. Legally, you already have the right, but there are protocols, documents, subscriptions. It will take about a week." "Perfect." "Second, we will need to establish how you want to present yourself publicly. Reveal everything at once, gradually, only in specific circles." Sarah thought about Marcus, Emma, and Lily. She thought of Catherine laughing at her, on Richard looking down on her. "Gradually. First, I want to establish some protections, maybe strategic investments that put me in positions of power without fanfare. Then, when the time is right, full disclosure." Jonathan took notes, approving. "Smart. Now, tell me about these children you mentioned." Sarah explained everything. The absurd event, Marcus and the twins, the 3 days at the aquarium, how Emma and Lily were responding to it. Jonathan listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions. "And do you like this man, Marcus Hale?" Sarah hesitated. "I like his honesty. He is broken, lost, but he is trying. Daughters need stability, and I can offer that now, not just emotionally but in every way." "Marcus Hale, One of the younger lawyers chimed in, typing away on his laptop. Founder of Hale Technologies. Net worth estimated at $120 million. Impressive, but still significantly smaller than yours, Ms. Mitchell. Sarah smiled wryly. He can't know. Not yet. I need him to want me for who I am, not for what I have. Understandable, Jonathan agreed. But eventually you will have to tell. Relationships built on half-truths fall apart. I know. I just need the right moment. They spent 3 hours discussing strategies. Sarah authorized investments in educational technology companies, created a charitable foundation focused on public schools, and began the process of reactivating bank accounts that had been dormant for years. When she left the office at noon, Sarah Mitchell was no longer just a teacher. It was a silent force about to reshape their little corner of the world. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale was having the day from hell. Richard, still bitter over his dismissal from organizing Marcus's personal events, had spread poisonous gossip throughout elite social circles. Dinners started to be canceled. Partners held concern meetings about the company's image. Catherine had called 6 times, leaving increasingly manipulative messages. Marcus, honey, I'm worried about you. People are talking. They say you are having a nervous breakdown considering people unsuitable for your daughters. I can help fix this. He deleted all the messages without listening to the end. What disturbed him was not the gossip. It was the growing feeling that I had found something genuine in Sarah, but I didn't know how to process it. Diana had to have been your perfect partner, your soulmate. How could he consider anyone else? And more, how could he consider someone so different from the world he inhabited? He was in the office, looking at financial reports without actually seeing them, when Emma rushed in. Daddy, Sarah called. She wants to take us to the zoo tomorrow. Marcus smiled despite everything. Did she call? For you? For me and Lily. She said she had a special surprise planned. Lily appeared seconds later, equally excited. Marcus watched his daughters practically jumping with joy and made a decision. Fuck Catherine, Richard, and everyone else. His daughters were happy. That was all that mattered. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the Hale mansion with a mysterious smile. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, but there was something different about her posture. More confidence, perhaps, or purpose. Ready for the surprise? She asked the twins. What is it? What is it? Emma begged. You'll find out along the way. Marcus decided to follow them, curious. The driver took them not to the zoo, but to a wildlife rehabilitation center upstate. Sarah, what is this? Marcus asked. I know the director, Sarah explained calmly. She owes me a favor. Today the girls will feed orphaned bear cubs. Emma and Lily screamed with joy. Marcus was impressed. Who do you know here? Sarah just smiled. I have my connections. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah had donated $100,000 to the center that morning, granting her full VIP access. Jonathan had made the transfer through an offshore account that wouldn't lead to her, at least not yet. As the twins played with furry puppies under the supervision of experienced keepers, Marcus pulled Sarah aside. You are full of surprises. Everyone has layers, Marcus. You're just starting to peel mine. He studied her. This woman his entire world had judged unsuitable and realized something disturbing. He was beginning to care, not just because his daughters adored her, but because Sarah challenged him, made him think, took him out of his comfort zone. Sarah, I need to ask you something serious. You can ask. Why are you doing this? Really? You don't know us. You were humiliated at that party. You could have just disappeared. Why stay? Sarah looked at Emma and Lily, laughing as a bear cub licked her hands. Because when I was 7 years old, my parents died in a car accident. My grandmother raised me, but she was distant, trapped in grief. I spent years of my childhood desperate for someone who really saw me, who genuinely cared. She turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with sincere emotion. I see that in them, this emptiness, and I can't ignore it. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Without thinking, he reached out and grabbed Sarah's hand. Thanks for seeing what I couldn't. Sarah squeezed back, and for a moment they were just 2 broken people trying to fix things. What none of them saw was the photographer hiding in the trees, hired by Catherine to document any inappropriate behavior she might use against Marcus. And as that man captured images of Marcus holding Sarah's hand, of his happy daughters, of an unlikely family beginning to form, he had no idea he was photographing one of the richest women on the East Coast. Sarah Mitchell was carefully assembling her chessboard, and in 2 weeks, when all the pieces were in place, the whole world would discover that the fat woman everyone laughed at was, in fact, the queen of the game. Catherine Sterling sat on the porch of her Manhattan penthouse, sipping a mimosa while flipping through photos the private investigator had sent. Marcus holding that fat teacher's hand, the twins smiling like idiots, everyone looking like one happy, pathetic family. She smiled with pure venom. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. That night, Catherine organized a last-minute charity dinner at the city's most exclusive club. He invited all of Marcus's partners, important investors, opinion makers from high society, and of course, he made sure Marcus received an invitation he couldn't refuse without seeming rude. The theme? Corporate responsibility and public image. Marcus felt his stomach sink when he read the invitation. He knew exactly what Catherine was planning. But refusing would mean admitting weakness, so he accepted. What he didn't expect was Sarah to call 2 hours later. Marcus, I know about dinner. Like you? It doesn't matter. I'll go with you. Sarah, no. Catherine will tear you apart publicly. That's her goal, to humiliate me through you. I know. And I'm going anyway. Duster, what? Why put yourself in that position? Sarah was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had a firmness that Marcus had never heard before. Because I'm tired of people like Catherine, and because the time has come for some truths to come to light. The night of the dinner, Catherine was radiant. Designer dress, very expensive jewelry, victorious smile painted on her lips with perfect red lipstick. The ballroom was filled with Manhattan's elite, all drinking expensive champagne and pretending they cared about charity. Marcus arrived with Sarah and the murmuring began immediately. She really came, someone whispered. What courage, or how stupid, another replied. Sarah wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress with no ostentatious markings. Her plus-size body was framed with dignity, not excuses. She walked beside Marcus with her head high, ignoring the stares. Catherine practically floated over to them. Marcus, what a joy you came. And he brought his friend. She looked Sarah up and down with barely concealed disdain. Sarah, isn't it? The teacher. How brave of you to show up. Catherine, Sarah greeted calmly. Thank you for the invitation. Although I haven't formally received one. Oh, well, this event is for a very specific circle. People who understand corporate responsibility, public image, that kind of thing. Catherine smiled with toxic falsehood. But I'm sure you'll learn a lot just by watching. Marcus clenched his jaw, about to intervene, but Sarah placed a gentle hand on his arm. Actually, Catherine, I know a lot about corporate responsibility. Maybe more than you imagine. Catherine laughed, that high-pitched, condescending laugh. Honey, you teach 8-year-olds how to add. Let's not pretend you operate on the same level as the people here. The circle around them had grown. Everyone wanted to watch the public massacre. Marcus looked sick, but Sarah remained completely calm. You're right, Sarah agreed, and Catherine blinked in surprise. I operate on a different level, very different. Catherine frowned, confused. It was then that Jonathan Blackwood entered the room, followed by 2 assistants carrying leather briefcases. Good evening, everyone, Jonathan announced in a voice that commanded immediate attention. Sorry for the interruption, but I have urgent documents that require signatures from Ms. Mitchell. The entire hall froze. Catherine looked from Jonathan to Sarah, her brain trying to process. Jonathan Blackwood, someone whispered. What does he want with the teacher? Another murmured. Jonathan walked directly up to Sarah, greeting her with obvious respect. Miss Mitchell, the transfers have been completed. You now have complete operational control of the trust fund as requested. He opened one of the folders. Your $400 million are officially under your management. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear hearts stopping. Catherine turned white, then red, then white again. What? 400? Sarah turned to face her, and for the first time that night she allowed herself to smile. A small but devastating smile. Millions, Catherine. $400 million. Inherited from my grandfather, Theodore Mitchell. Maybe you've heard of him? He owned Mitchell Industries for 40 years. An older woman in the back of the room gasped. Theodore Mitchell? The textile magnate? Was he your grandfather? It was, Sarah confirmed calmly. I am the only direct heir. I chose not to use my fortune for years because I wanted to live a normal life, build something on my own merit. But recently I've realized that some situations require reminders of who really has power in this room. Catherine looked like she was having a nervous breakdown in slow motion. Marcus was equally shocked, looking at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. You are rich? Yes. Richer than you, in fact. Sarah turned to Catherine again. So when you laughed at me at that event, when you called me inadequate, when you insinuated that I wasn't classy enough for Marcus's world, you were, in fact, humiliating yourself, Jonathan continued, clearly enjoying the moment. Miss Mitchell also just became the largest individual shareholder in Sterling Communications. Your company, Catherine. Your father's company. He handed documents to Sarah. Congratulations. You now have majority voting power. Catherine made a strangled sound. That's not possible. Like you, I bought shares gradually through several accounts over the last 2 weeks, Sarah explained with exaggerated patience, as if she were talking to a child. Your father was selling stakes to cover gambling debts. I just took advantage of the opportunity. The entire hall was in absolute shock. Richard, the event planner who had snubbed Sarah, was leaning against the wall, apparently having an existential crisis. "And Richard," Sarah turned to him, "about you spreading poisonous gossip about Marcus and his daughters. I strongly recommend that you stop, because I just bought the building where your office is. Your rent is due in 3 weeks, and I'm considering not renewing the lease." Richard turned pale as a ghost. One of Marcus's partners, an older man named Howard, started laughing, a genuine laugh of appreciation. "Oh my God, Mitchell, your granddaughter. I should have imagined it from the eyes." Theodore had the same calculating eyes. He raised his glass. "Welcome back to the world, darling. Your grandfather would have loved this." Others started laughing too, not at Sarah, but at the absurd situation. Catherine Sterling, the queen of poisonous gossip and cruel judgments, had been completely destroyed by someone she considered trash. Marcus finally found his voice. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me?" Sarah turned to him, and for the first time that night, her expression softened. "Because I needed to know if you wanted me for who I am, not for what I have. You spent a year being pursued by women who wanted your money, your position, your influence. I didn't want to be another one, but you lied. I omitted it." Sarah corrected gently. "Everything I told you about myself was true. I'm a teacher. I live in Brooklyn. I chose this life. The difference is that now you know that I chose, not that it was all I could have." Emma and Lily, who were at home with the nanny, were not present for that, but Marcus knew exactly what they would say. They had chosen Sarah before they knew anything about money. They had seen his heart first. Catherine, finally regaining some control, attempted one last attack. "So what, you bought your way into Marcus's life? This is even more pathetic. Using money to compensate for your appearance." Sarah took a step toward Catherine, and her voice, though calm, carried steel. "My appearance was never the problem, Catherine. The problem has always been your inner ugliness. You are thin, beautiful by conventional standards, rich from marriage to a man you don't love, and yet you are miserable, because beauty without kindness is just empty packaging." Sarah smiled. "And now you work for me, so I strongly suggest you learn some humility quickly." Catherine began to cry, tears of anger and humiliation running through her expensive makeup. She ran out of the room, leaving a trail of impressed silence. Jonathan began to slowly applaud. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding Sarah Mitchell, the overweight teacher who had just reminded Manhattan's elite that underestimating people is always a fatal mistake. Marcus pulled Sarah to the side, away from the others. "I don't know what to say. Are you mad?" "I'm impressed, scared, confused, but not mad." He ran his hand through his hair. "My daughters chose you when you were just a teacher. I started to care about you when you were just a teacher. Money doesn't change that." "He is sure?" Marcus looked at this extraordinary woman, who had been humiliated and ridiculed, but had waited for the perfect moment to completely turn the tables. "My daughters are smarter than me. They saw his greatness first. It just took me a little longer to catch up." Sarah smiled, a genuine, relieved smile, and then Marcus did something that surprised them both. He kissed her. There, in the middle of that elite ballroom in front of everyone who judged them, Marcus Hale kissed Sarah Mitchell as if she were the most precious thing in the world. When they separated, Sarah whispered, "The twins are going to freak out when they find out they lost this." Marcus laughed, his first real laugh in over a year. And as they walked out of that dinner together, leaving behind a room full of people reevaluating every prejudiced judgment they'd ever made, Sarah Mitchell knew she'd made the right choice, not in revealing your fortune, but in using his power to protect a broken family that needed love, not money, and in teaching the world a lesson that should be obvious, but that needed to be constantly relearned. Never, ever underestimate someone for their appearance, because sometimes the person you laugh at is the very person who can destroy your entire world. And when that person chooses mercy over revenge, you should be grateful every day for how lucky you were. 3 months after that night at the charity dinner, Marcus Hale's life had changed in ways he never imagined possible. Sarah Mitchell didn't move into the mansion right away. He tried to keep his apartment in Brooklyn, to continue teaching his third-grade classes, to build his relationship with Emma and Lily in an organic way. Marcus respected that, even though the twins practically begged Sarah to move out every day. What changed was everything around them. Catherine Sterling had been forced to resign as Director of Public Relations at Sterling Communications following a unanimous board vote. Sarah, as the majority shareholder, could have fired her with public humiliation, but he didn't do that. Instead, he offered Catherine a choice: resign with dignity and a neutral letter of recommendation, or be fired publicly and have all of her manipulative schemes exposed in the media. Catherine chose the first option, but not without trying one last low blow. She sold the photos she had of Marcus and Sarah to a tabloid, hoping to create a scandal. The headline was predictable: "Billionaire left elite for fat teacher, crisis or strategy." The article lasted exactly 6 hours. Sarah simply bought the entire tabloid that afternoon, fired the editor responsible, and republished the article with a different title. Billionaire philanthropist Sarah Mitchell invests in public education. Romance with CEO is a bonus. The new version told the real story. Sarah Mitchell, heiress of $400 million, who chose to live as a teacher for a decade to make a real difference, who donated $50 million to renovate public schools in needy communities, who used his wealth not for ostentation, but to create meaningful change. The media ate this with a wooden spoon. Within a week, Sarah was on the cover of 3 major magazines, not as the billionaire's fat girlfriend, but as the philanthropist who redefined success. Richard, the event planner, lost his office when Sarah didn't renew the building's lease. He tried to sue for discrimination, but Jonathan Blackwood destroyed the case in 48 hours by presenting audio recordings of Richard making fatphobic and discriminatory comments about Sarah and other customers. Richard eventually agreed to a silent settlement and disappeared from the Manhattan social scene completely. But the real transformation happened within the small family Sarah had chosen. Emma and Lily blossomed in ways Marcus barely recognized. The deep sadness that lived in his eyes had been replaced by curiosity, joy, and antics typical of 7-year-old children. They laughed constantly, asked endless questions, and for the first time since Diana's death, they seemed truly alive. Sarah took them on adventures every week: museums, parks, science laboratories, art workshops. She never used money to impress people, but rather to open doors that would normally be closed, and the girls took it all in with a hunger that broke and healed the heart at the same time. Marcus watched all this with growing gratitude. Sarah had entered their lives as an outsider, humiliated at a ridiculous event, and now she was the glue that held their family together. He had changed too. He started working fewer hours, being present at dinners, and really listening when his daughter spoke. Sarah taught him that presence is worth more than gifts, that time is worth more than money. One Saturday afternoon, 6 months after that first meeting at the Grand Hotel, Marcus was in the park watching Sarah play frisbee with the twins. She laughed loudly, her body moving freely, without any shame or self-consciousness. Emma and Lily ran around her like excited puppies. Howard, Marcus's oldest partner, appeared next to him on the bench. "You were lucky, Hale. I know. No, you don't understand." Howard sat down, his face serious. "I met Theodore Mitchell. Brilliant man, but ruthless in business. He destroyed competitors without blinking. His granddaughter could have done the same to you, to Catherine, to all of us. But she chose kindness when she had every reason to choose revenge." Marcus nodded slowly. "She said something to me last week. He said revenge is a prison you build for yourself. That justice does not need to be cruel to be effective." "You knew. Very wise." Howard watched Sarah spin Emma in the air while Lily took photos with an old cell phone. "Your daughters chose well. Better than you would have chosen on your own, no offense." "No offense received. You are absolutely right." That night during dinner at the mansion, Emma asked a question that changed everything. "Sarah, will you live here with us?" Sarah placed her fork on her plate, looking at Marcus briefly before responding. "Do you want me to live here?" "Yes." Lily responded immediately. "You can be our real mother." The silence that followed was charged. Marcus knew this moment would come, but S was not prepared for the intensity of the emotion. "Girls," Sarah began gently, "I love you so much. You know that. But I could never replace your mother. She was special, unique, and will always be part of you." Emma shook her head vigorously. "We know, but Mom left, and we're still here, and you are here too. You can be our new mother, not our substitute mother." The wisdom of that 7-year-old child was devastating. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. Marcus cleared his throat. "Sarah, the girls aren't the only ones who want you here. I also want." Sarah looked at him, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to fully imagine it. A family. Not perfect, not traditional, but real. "Okay," she whispered, but slowly. "Let's do this the right way." Emma and Lily burst into squeals of joy, jumping off the table to hug Sarah hard enough to knock over a smaller person. Marcus joined in the hug, and for a moment, they were just 4 broken people who had found repair in each other. 2 years later, Sarah Mitchell and Marcus Hale were married in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden, just close family and true friends. Emma and Lily were bridesmaids wearing blue dresses that they chose themselves. There was no Catherine, Richard, or any of those who laughed that first night. They didn't deserve to witness that happiness. Sarah continued teaching, but now also ran the Mitchell Foundation for Public Education, which had renovated 120 schools in 3 states. Marcus cut his workload in half, focusing on being there for his daughters. And the twins? Emma became a passionate anti-bullying activist, giving talks in schools about acceptance and kindness. Lily developed a love for marine biology by volunteering at the aquarium every week. Catherine Sterling tried to get back on the social circuit twice, but discovered that destroyed reputations are rarely rebuilt. She ended up moving to Europe, where no one knew her story of public humiliation. Richard never recovered his events company. The last time anyone heard from him, he was working as an administrative assistant in a small town, far from the spotlight he loved so much. One Sunday morning, 3 years after that fateful dinner at the Grand Hotel, Sarah was having coffee with Marcus while the twins made pancakes in the kitchen, laughing and making a mess. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked suddenly. "From what?" "Of having entered into that madness, having endured the humiliation, of having revealed himself when he could have simply disappeared." Sarah thought for a moment, hearing Emma and Lily's laughter echoing through the house. "No, not for a second." She took Marcus's hand. "That night taught me something important, that being underestimated can be the biggest advantage, that people who judge by appearance always lose in the end, and that the best families are not the ones you are born into, but the ones you choose." Marcus kissed her hand. "Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for letting your daughters choose first." Emma appeared at the door with a crooked tower of pancakes. "We made breakfast, and we didn't burn anything this time." Lily appeared behind her with orange juice. "Sarah, can you teach us that French recipe today? What did your grandmother teach you?" Sarah smiled, getting up to join the girls in the kitchen. "Of course, love. Let's make crepes." As the family gathered around the kitchen table, laughing over burnt pancakes and planning their day, a simple but powerful truth hung in the air. The best revenge is never cruelty. It's living well. It's building something beautiful with broken pieces. It's proving, every day, that those who underestimated you were absolutely wrong. Sarah Mitchell had been ridiculed by women who thought beauty was measured in inches on a waist and zeros on bank accounts. But she proved that greatness is measured in kindness, in resilience, in choosing love when hate would be easier. And while Catherine Sterling woke up alone in an empty Paris apartment, bitter and isolated, Sarah woke up surrounded by a family who loved her not despite who she was, but precisely because of it. The twins had chosen right that first night. They saw what adults couldn't, that real value has nothing to do with looks or money. It has to do with the size of the heart. And Sarah Mitchell had the biggest heart of all. And the most powerful lesson from this story? Never let the judgment of others define your worth. Use underestimation as fuel, not as prison. And when you reach the top, choose to lift others up with you, not step on them like they did you. Because in the end, true victory is not destroying your beliefs, enemies. It's building something so beautiful that they realize exactly what they missed by underestimating you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. Every week we bring real stories of overcoming, justice, and comebacks that will make you believe that kindness always wins in the end. Until next time.